Welcome to the IntelleXual. I'm Whitney Wegman.
And I'm David Dawson. On today's episode, we revisit a guest from our 100th episode of our podcast, Miss Sue Vicory of My Power of One.
Also the president of Heartland Films.
And in today's episode, we're going to get a little bit more of the background of this incredibly talented and compassionate woman and her film productions that she's done and her charity work that she's doing. It's going to be a really great episode. Welcome to the Intellectual Talk Show. We are sitting with Sue Vicory of My Power of One. Sue, thanks for joining us once again.
Second time with us? Yes, thank you for having me again.
The last time was in the Horton Grand stage.
It was very impressive. 100th anniversary.
Yeah, 100 episodes of the podcast. We're coming up on our 200th soon.
That's nice.
Trying to figure out if we're going to do anything interesting for that.
You will, I'm sure.
We should.
But we talked a little bit about My Power of One when you came onto that episode, and that was a crazy podcast episode because there was a bunch of different guests, and I don't think everybody quite got as much time as we usually do, but we got a whole hour with you on the TV show. So
and lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about.
And first off, thank you for
our
all
shirts.
Our matching attire.
Our shirts.
Check it out.
Engage. You like this one because it's Captain Picard.
And that's my very first shirt. Engage was the very first word of all of them we've ever created. And we're up to 20-some now.
That's a lot.
So, and that particular shirt is retired. So no one else can buy it ever again. You have the very last shirt. So that's pretty special.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What is the driving force behind the shirts? Like, how did you come to do the shirts? Because they're iconic. I mean, I see them all over the place, certainly here in San Diego.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people in San Diego.
We have a big following here in San Diego. The brand got started in May 5th of 2014, which was my birthday. And I committed to intentionally raising the positivity of humanity for all of time at that point. And it was about a 10-year story, which we'll talk about. Went back to my very first film about making a film about homelessness in our nation. And it stayed with me for 10 years, and it kept tapping me on the shoulder and saying, Sue, My Power of One is yours to birth. So on 2014, about 3 years ago now, I launched the brand with one inspirational word per shirt. And we started with these 4 words, which you have the very first one: engage, believe, inspire, and empower. The story behind that is I met a gal in Kansas City that had been homeless. I befriended her. I put her into my world. I thought she was amazing. I said, meet everybody I know. Her life changed exponentially in that friendship. And she told me during that period of time that I engaged with her, I inspired her, I believed in her, and I empowered her.
Wow.
So we made the 4 pillars of the brand, those 4 words, and they will forever be words in our brand. So it was a note to me that we are that impactful in the life of another. And if we become intentional about it, we become way more powerful, that we know that we're doing it. So it's very important to me that you are wearing the Engage shirt, because it does mark the beginning of the brand. And it'll be a forever word, because without engaging with someone, no matter who they are, what their status is, you can't begin that connection of friendship or mentoring or inspiring. So that is the very first sort of action someone has to take to empower that relationship, or the possibility of it.
That's how my podcast started and everything too, is because I have social anxieties, and I had a hard time getting myself out the door and engaging with anybody. And the podcast was kind of how I forced myself to do that.
Exactly.
So it gave me a kind of a structured venue for engaging in conversation with other people.
It's a big word.
Here I am, all this time down the road.
We're engaging now.
We're engaging.
Yeah.
We're
200 shows later. Yeah.
So let's take a look at all the different shirts that you've got available, and then we can talk a little bit more about it after we see it.
So those are about half of the words that we have now. And I keep creating new ones. I keep saying, I'm not going to have any more, but almost like 2 come at a time. And sometimes I'll do one specifically for an organization. Last year we partnered with 10 or 12 organizations around the country, and we raised money for them through the particular words when we went on our journey. So
Your journey.
lots of give back.
The big journey.
Circular give back for us.
We'll talk about the big journey after the commercial break. This is the Intellectual Talk Show. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Intellectual. We were just talking with Sue Vicory about her t-shirts, and I have a question for you, Sue.
Sure.
On the clip, we saw a lovely multicolored shirt, which is slightly different from the others. Tell us a little bit about that. That was interesting.
Yeah, the heart shirt, when I came up with the heart word, and there's so many powerful words, it's sometimes hard to decide which one to do next. But I thought, how could we make, the logo is set, but how can we make it look slightly different? So we decided to do a rainbow look. And so the gal that does the shirts has originated with me 10 or 12 years ago. She said, I need a challenge. Thanks for bringing that on. So she, in doing the screen press, she had to squirt paint, like 4 or 5 or 6 paints, and do it almost like a rainbow would do it. And she said every shirt is slightly different because we have the combination of paints will mix a little bit differently. But she loved the challenge. It's our one and only shirt that looks like that so far. And it's very special. The word heart, of course, is very special. One heart.
I loved it the second I saw it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that is
very
different,
popular.
and it's nice.
Yeah.
Well, and the individuality of each heart is being slightly different.
Really,
and
that's neat too.
Very sweet.
Yeah. And the brand stands for all of us being one together in humanity. So one heart seems to really be sort of at the core of that when you think about it. We all have a heartbeat, and we're all sort of, our hearts are beating at the same time.
And how did you meet your artist who does the shirts?
So Stephanie, I met her in Kansas City during the making of my first film, Homelessness and the Power of One. And I'd gone to a Salvation Army there in Kansas City, and I asked for to our church to mentor a homeless family. And they said, well, we don't have a program for that, but why don't you go meet Stephanie Tillman? And she actually had been in the shelter for 4 months with her husband, who was an electrical engineer, and her 2 children. And they were in transition. By the time I met her, she was out of the shelter and transition. So I called Stephanie up and I said, I'd like to come and visit with you about the film I'm making. We sat down for coffee, and I immediately acknowledged how amazing she was. She had gifts that I could identify in her. She had a vision board for some plan that she had to do in the community. And I said, Stephanie, you are pretty amazing. I said, I'd like you to meet my community of the business world of Kansas City. So I then took her out to meet the who's who of whoever my connections were to show them her vision. She'd been a drug addict on the street of Kansas City over her period of being homeless. But to me, she was extraordinary. So Stephanie is the one that helped me co-create the brand. She did the website, she did the logo. She actually physically makes all the shirts to this day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great story.
That's really cool.
And what inspired you to do a film about homelessness? Was it interacting with Stephanie or?
It actually started before that. When I was in my 40s and our girls had gone off to college, I said to myself one night, who do I want to be the second half of my life? And within an hour, I was signed up to film school in New York City. So I went off to film school, and I learned how to make a film very quickly. Then I went to editing school, and I learned how to edit, set up an editing suite in my home. 9 months later, I'm like, okay, now I probably better make a film. So I did all this prep work, and then I'm like, okay, what shall I make a film about? And the first thing that came forth for me was the word homelessness. And intellectually, I said to myself, probably the reason was because I'd done 10 years of urban volunteer work in Kansas City, and I knew some of the executive directors of the shelter. So I thought it might be an easy way to sort of get in. And I originally focused on homeless women. 3 years later, and 15 cities later, we made a film that premiered 10 days after Katrina hit New Orleans. So we had a standing room only premiere. Nick Lowry of the Kansas City Chiefs narrated it, came to the premiere. We raised $30,000 that night, and the film went on to raise $200,000.
Wow.
So my very first film turned out pretty spectacular because I trusted and I kind of had faith that that was a destiny piece for me.
Well, we have a clip of you working
With the homeless kids.
with the homeless kids.
In Kansas City.
Let's take a look at that real quick, and then we can talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Imagine one person by the smallest of his acts affecting change in another. And then imagine that person being you. Imagine that act becoming your legacy, a legacy of love. Everyone is worthy, has potential, value, and deserves to begin again. We have to believe as a nation these truths. Any two people can build a bridge. Imagine hearing the voice of homelessness and then bringing along others to listen. Imagine looking into the eyes of a homeless child and seeing a soul in need who lives inside. Imagine a shift in perception among those who believe that homelessness means a failed life. Imagine believing that the power of one could affect change so dramatically that an entire nation would stand still long enough to listen. Imagine actually, authentically owning the right of being the greatest nation in the world by modeling compassion for the homeless, or you and me.
You know, the thing that I like most about My Power of One is people always ask the question, you know, what can I do? What difference can I make?
Yep.
But the reality is the only thing you can do is be you.
One action at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can
not
only do what
complicated.
you are capable of doing and,
Yeah.
and in the context of who you are. And I love the My Power of One
The
idea.
intentionality of it is what's the difference. And when we did this film, it screened across the nation for a long time after it came out. And I had people in the audience ask me a lot, what can I do? Now you've got me inspired. What are the actions I can take? So I had to do quite a bit of leading with soup kitchens and, you know, donating used clothing and stuff like that. So there seemed to be a gap between I have the desire, now what? So we became a little bit of an avenue for, after the inspiration, then how do we capitalize on that? You see what I mean? So
Right.
that's kind of what the brand has done as well, is we've reminded people of what they already know, that they matter in the lives of their community, in the lives of their peer group and their family. And so we just invite people into that reminder, and we encourage an activity, an act of kindness. We have so many stories from our tour that we can talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think we should talk about that a little bit more as soon as we're done with this commercial break. Hello again, and welcome back, everyone. Just before commercial break, we were talking to Sue Vicory about her film on homelessness and how it began the roots of the My Power of One brand. So now we'll talk a little bit about Sue's other film and how that launched into a much bigger endeavor. So Sue, can you tell us a little bit about the film?
I can. We moved from Kansas City to San Diego in 2011. So I sort of transplanted with my husband's job, and I was acclimating here in lovely San Diego. And I got inspired one time to make a film called One, about global humanity. And the reason I did was because Facebook was just aflutter with polarity. Politics, or no matter what it was.
Welcome to the internet.
Well, and more so now, but at that time there was a lot of polarity on there, which is what it is. But I thought, why couldn't we show and emphasize what we have in common rather than what separates us? So I went out on a task of making a film called One about global humanity. And I filmed in South Africa, I filmed over in Europe, and I filmed around the United States, and I did a lot of interviews and asked some very basic questions about oneness. So in making that film, it further rooted in me the importance of one human soul in the midst of all of humanity. And it was really just me on a trajectory to give birth to this brand. But I think we have a clip of it or a trailer that we could look at.
Let's take a look at that.
We are sparks of the divine. We are here to evolve as our actualizing potential. That's why we're here, to creatively be together in a kind of oneness, allness, to evolve that which we actually are.
While one is very singular, it is also a connection, because one begins the process of 2, 3 ad infinitum.
When I think about one, the first thought that comes to mind is priority. What's most important? What am I going to focus on?
When you think of one, you think of unity, but for me, when I think of one, the image really of diversity comes to mind. I think of a wide collection of a number of people, really unified by a purpose, a single purpose.
We are connected, and we all have more in common. We have so much in common. We all basically really want the same things.
And one person can have one idea and can turn that into millions, thousands, now billion individuals to take action.
I believe that everybody can make a difference. It doesn't have to be a worldwide difference. It's touching one life at a time and making a difference in that life.
To me, it's this very powerful number that we can all kind of get with, because sometimes it'll tend to be an idea that every human being could circle around and focus on. So that's that one element.
We think of impacting humanity in big ways, but really it's the small little interactions we have that make a difference. And oftentimes, we don't even know the impact we have on people's lives.
But the moment you realize that the old guy at the end of the bar feels the same exact way you do, it kind of, that maybe brings people together a little bit more.
So when I think about and feel into oneness, it's actually the wholeness. It's the vast, ionic place of what is. And that is us.
The power of one, or oneness as a whole, it's based on action.
I define success with what difference can I make today in the moment with the people I'm around, with the things that I do, with situations I find myself in. And to the extent that you can make a difference in that moment, then you're successful.
I can do something. I can't do everything, but I can do something.
That I can do something. I can't do everything, but I can do something. That is a wonderful message.
It's powerful.
I love that.
Yeah, because it's something that it's a formula for all of us. And I took it back to one word at a time, how powerful our words are that come out of our mouths. Mm-hmm. And for me, they predict your future. So I tell people to be very conscientious about what words they choose in their conversations. And each action, each interaction, the way of being has a ripple effect that goes throughout humanity infinitely. So if we're conscientious or intentional about those words and those actions and those intentions, then how high could we raise humanity if we infuse that with positivity? So that's what I was committed to after I made the homeless film and I had that transformation about how important one person is dramatically in their stories. I thought, that's doable for me. And then that planted a seed that 10 years later we launched this brand One story I could tell very quickly about it was when Jay and I were over in Paris filming for One. I had this experience that said to me, it's time to launch the brand. It'd been needling me, tapping me on the shoulder for 10 years, and I had this sort of, it's time. So I acknowledged, okay, I will. I went back came back to the States, launched the website, the logo, and our shirts within 6 months by Stephanie. She's the one that facilitated that for me. And outside of 2 years, David, I saw people standing in front of the Eiffel Tower with my Power of One shirts on. In under 2 years from me saying yes in Paris, I'm ready. Less than 2 years later, I have a dozen pictures of people in Paris wearing their My Power of One shirts. That is so significantly powerful to me that it's undeniable that this is a destiny thing for me. There's no turning back. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I had my trouble as a youth, drugs and alcohol and the things that I went through, and the power of words, the things that people can say to you at any given moment. Like, you don't know what situation the person across the table from you or across the bus from you is going through. And sometimes just that one thing you say to somebody, even as simple as good morning, that little act of kindness for the day can completely change the course of their day. And I don't think people think that through quite as much.
They probably don't, because they're so busy focused on facilitating their own life and into their own sort of feelings and all of that. But it's just a sort of a reverse way of seeing the magnitude by which you exist in what I call the infinity of humanity. And it's a different way of seeing yourself fitting into all of those friendships and relationships and strangers. Sometimes strangers are the most powerful connections you'll ever have because you'll never see them again and you have no idea what they go off into their life. But that's almost where emphasis can lie, is taking one full day of your life and being intentional about every word, every action, every possibility that you run across, and see how does that feel. What is the possibility of the benefit to humanity? It's the way I look at it.
I would love to hear some more about how you've connected to people in your journeys, but we have to do that after this commercial break. Welcome back, everyone. Just before the commercial break, we were talking to Sue about the ripple effects that a single act can have through history and amongst your community. And I would like to hear a little bit more about your journey and all of the ripple effects that have happened in the last year for you.
Oh, that'd be great. In 2016, my husband retired. And within 2 or 3 months, we bought a 24-foot RV here in San Diego, and I crafted the idea of taking a 48-state tour, calling it My Power of One, 12 Acts of Kindness, and we set forth on the road January a year ago with our golden retriever. We traveled 30,000 miles around the country, all 48 states, and we accomplished 12 acts of kindness in all 4 corners of the United States, all completely different and all extraordinary in some fashion. Some of them showed up during the year. Someone said, I would like to do something with you. When we actually took off in January, we had maybe 2 planned. So as the year went on, then the others showed up, and they became so much bigger by the time we actually accomplished the event. We had sometimes 1,000, 2,000 people at them. We raised probably in the midst of a year $10,000, $15,000 with everything. So it was the magic of kindness, or I like to say kindness is contagious. And so we had some really amazing experience from Seattle to San Diego to Macon, Georgia, to Long Island, New York, to Milwaukee, and they were all completely different. But the thing that was really amazing that the year turned out to be was we partnered with about 10 or 12 organizations, different words partnered with a different organization, and that shirt all year long raised money for that organization. So we just layered up all these ways of doing good and gathering up people and inspiring people. In Seattle, we did a glamour day for homeless women at Mary's Place, and that was, every single one was so, the volunteers just fell in love with the opportunity, and it gave them a place to do some good and feel good about their place in their community.
I remember you and I met November before you left, and I really wanted to come and join you at some point.
That's right, you were going to.
'Cause I love road tripping and I love
that's
driving.
Right. You were
and,
going to come to one of them.
I was desperate, but my life took a number of different turns last year that were unexpected. But I enjoyed following along on your journey.
Yes, we did a lot of social media on it.
When you left, when you took the step of actually walking out the door, because that's always like the hardest thing, I think, for a lot of people is just, it's like people talk about the things that they never end up doing.
True, they have dreams and visions.
Yeah. How did it feel to actually sit yourself down into that van and drive off from the house?
It felt exciting, but my whole life has been some version of an adventure. So that's how I know to navigate a life. My husband, maybe not so much, but he was retired. He was so happy to be, out from his working job, and so he drove the entire 30,000 miles. And we threw in with us our golden retriever, who is now 12 and a half. She had no idea that was on her bucket list to do that. But we are in a 24-foot RV that was brand wrapped for the brand, and Stephanie, my friend in Kansas City, designed that.
It looked really good.
It looked amazing. We did a photo shoot here in San Diego with actors and actresses that ended up being on the van, signifying all the amazing things the brand stands for. So we were like a moving billboard. And we kind of forgot when we were driving along the highway that we were in this van with, all of that on it. And people would beep as they'd go by. They'd take pictures and they'd post them on Facebook. They'd give us a thumbs up and things like that. And it was so endearing. And what we learned was so much good is going on around the country. And it is just, if you notice, and if you take the time to notice, then there are acts of kindness, anonymous acts of kindness going on every day somewhere. And some of them are gigantic. Some of the events we got to go to were like their 25th anniversary. We did one in Macon, Georgia that was called the Special Children's Day. And it was the 25th anniversary of it. And they bussed in 40-some buses of special needs kids for a day-long sort of carnival at a 100-acre sort of lake facility. And we got to be witness to that, be involved in the sort of facilitating it. And it was just like, this stuff is going on everywhere all the time. So we gave visibility to it. We brought sort of attention to acts of kindness that it's easy to sort of, look at other things rather than see how much good is going on in the world.
Wow. What was the most impactful moment of the trip for you? I mean, I imagine you have just a ton of stories to tell, but looking back on it, what is the like singular moment that stands out for you, kind of representing what the whole trip was?
Of all it, and people do ask us that. They do ask that question of what was the most amazing location that you went to. And Jay and I have said one of our funny stories is that we drove this RV through the heart of New York City, let alone walking or driving in a car through New York City. We came in through Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Bridge, and we drove all the way through Manhattan and out Bronx on the other side. We stopped and parked 3 times, had interactions with people along the way, took pictures here and there. We thought that was so brave of us to do that, to take that on. And just the whole experience of meeting our nation, one city, one town at a time, and being real, being there with purpose, and being there to sort of leave some kindness in our path. It was really, and having Casey, she was a showpiece for us. She's a people magnet, so people would just come around her, and they would, she'd bring them into sort of our space, and we'd get to tell our story to them. So I think just meeting our nation, one community at a time, David, and we felt very patriotic, and we got to see a lot of history, and really just experience the pride of living in our country and all the good that it stands for.
Well, that's a nice thing to hear right now, because it seems like the last year has been one of the most divisive periods of time in our country's history, and in my history.
I lived through the 60s.
Experience, The 60s were before my time.
I lived through the 60s, so
but
been there.
But it especially if you spend as much time on social media as I do, it can feel like it's all us against them, but really we are all.
It can if you notice that.
You know.
And for me, I notice extraordinary, and I attract that. So that's where I put my emphasis. That's where I spend my time and my energy, I guess you would say. So it's our life experience really is what we, what we focus on.
Right.
And if you focus on polarity, then you notice polarity. If you focus on unity, then you see things that bring unity into the focus.
Yeah. My dad always said, your life is how you decide to experience it.
Of course it is. You co-create it.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah.
So it's a choice.
Nothing happens that you don't.
It's a choice.
Affect in how you choose to view it.
That's true. So with the brand, we've just been so proud to have every shirt order I get just gives me chills. That someone, if I know them or I don't know them, they're a stranger, whatever it is, we have one more word of positivity going out into the world. And it's like there's no better way to live than that for me. Every night I go to bed and I'm like, yep, this is why I was here. This was mine to birth. And it's a formula for really having a content life.
We'll be hearing some more about your life experiences in just a moment, but again, we have to cut to some commercials, so we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Intellectual Talk Show. We're here with Sue Vicory, and we're talking about My Power of One. And I have the wonderful situation of sitting between two incredible women at this table right now.
I think so.
Who I met completely in individual situations, but as it turns out, I've discovered you guys have known each other a very long time.
Yeah, a while now.
Maybe 10 years. It's been a while.
Oh, yes, yeah, just about, yeah. Yeah, 10 years.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, so we...
Tell the audience about that?
We met when I was in undergrad in Kansas City, and I was an intern for Sue, actually.
Yeah, my second film I made in Kansas City was called Kansas City Jazz and Blues, Past, Present, and Future. It's a film that took 5 years to make. And I actually, during the making of that film, I had my first interns. And it was just such a pleasure to work with students or people that would step in and say, can I help in some way? The film was pretty labor intensive to make. It was historic in nature, so I had to do a lot of archiving, lots of footage, lots of interviews, and it took me 5 years from beginning to end. So we actually premiered the film in 2010. We had Marilyn May headline it at the historic Gem Theater in the 18th and Vine. And we were lucky enough to work together for a period of time, did some of the footage of the musicians. We probably did 150 musicians during that period of making that, and maybe 40 interviews to make that film. And it ended up on PBS at the end of it, and we very, very proud of that film.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think we have clips of it.
I think we have a teaser.
Yeah, we should check it out.
Take a look at that.
Yeah.
Kansas City has music in its bones. It's always been alive with music. Kansas City is considered one of the four cradles of jazz, along with New Orleans, Chicago, and New York.
Jazz was born in New Orleans, but it grew up in Kansas City.
I feel like Kansas City has a lot of soul to it.
Not only did Kansas City develop its own sound, it's continually spawned great jazz and blues musicians into the mainstream of national and international music. Through the healing and hope that music provides, Kansas City artists continue to uplift their community and spread the joy of the unique Kansas City sound to the world.
That's fantastic. I love jazz.
It was an amazing film to work on. I learned so much. I had just gotten into doing film, And Sue let me shoot with her. I got to log and learn Avid, which I did Final Cut prior to that. So it was like, first day I went to interview, she's like, you know Avid? I'm like, nope, not at all. But she showed me, taught me. It was great. And I met some really cool jazz artists.
Right. The thing that was interesting, we lived in Kansas City for about 24 years by the time I started making that film, and I knew like zero about jazz.
Really?
I was an R&B girl. And so I had to sort of take it from day one to learn who are these people. I hadn't heard of probably 90% of them. I mean, Pat Metheny, obviously, some of them were well known. But these are superstars in their field, in their genre around the world. They're international stars living in Kansas City. And so we got to interview probably 40 of them and learn the story of jazz from the inception, which is the 1920s. So the difference for me making this film from the homeless film is I had to be accurate with my facts on this one. I had to do a lot of fact checking because I knew my audience would be the musicians and they would be looking at the film for its accuracy. So it was a lot more labor intensive to do this film. But when I watch it now, I can't believe I made it. I am so proud of it. Can't
That's
believe
wonderful.
that I was attached to it.
It's amazing. And just a fun journey.
It was.
Man, Lonnie with the soft shoe. That's
oh my gosh.
That's one of my favorite memories. So there's a jazz artist who also does soft shoe
tap
dancing,
right.
And he's just brilliant.
And he's still, every Friday night, he's still at the Phoenix, which is one of the historic places to play there in Kansas City. He has a brother that they do tap dancing together around the world. Just some great stories that initiated in Kansas City.
That's really
something
cool.
We're very proud of.
Well, that's wonderful. And we'll talk a bit more about your guys' experience together in Kansas City before they came to San Diego after this commercial break. Welcome back to the Intellectual Talk Show. We are sitting here with the incredible Sue Vicory, and we just got done talking about you two incredible ladies having a past history in Kansas City before San Diego. Sue, you've come to San Diego. You've made a name for yourself here. Heartland Films was one of, when I got back into San Diego filmmaking, Heartland Films was one of the first production company names that kind of came into my vision. And you have been such a strong encourager of female filmmakers in this town. You know, when people talk about you, it's My Power One, and it's powerful female filmmaker. And I think that's wonderful. I like to surround myself with other female filmmakers, and I like to see where you guys are going. And you recently did a whole 48 with an all-female crew and cast film team.
Kind of by accident. A year and a half ago, somehow I decided to do the 48-hour, which I'd never done before. And we started attracting women, great, amazing actresses. We ended up with 10 actresses that we had to use in the making of that. Our entire cast and crew, 25 altogether, all female. So it was extremely nurturing, female energy. We got to film entirely at the Horton Grand the entire day, which was extraordinary.
I heard you guys had like massage tables.
We had 2 masseuses on set. We treated our girls well. Yeah. And we had no glitches from beginning to end. You've done the experience before, so you know how tense it can be. I was so proud, David, to have my film turned in on time. The funny thing is, when the editor gave it to me and I raced to the location, turned it in time, 6 or 8 minutes ahead of time, I had not seen it. So I turned in a film that I had not seen. So I went home that night and the editor sent me the cut or the link. So I watched it in the privacy of my own home, what I had just turned in, had no idea what we had turned in. So it was something that we were so grateful to do, so proud, and the flow of that project was just extraordinary.
Now, I think our crew member, Jen Allen, was on your team, right?
Jen was AD. She was Team XX. I think we actually have a teaser from it. Yeah. But Jen, yep, she was one of our great helpers.
Let's take a quick look at it's Downstage, right?
Downstage, yep.
Downstage.
Among other things, I'm Alice Downey.
There are at least 5 light bulbs burned out, and the new current are driving me crazy.
I'll take care of it.
I came in early this morning and no one was here, and I swear I heard footsteps.
What are you doing here?
I don't care how scared you are. Get out there!
I think one of the things I always look forward to with your productions is it's a chance to see people smiling on film. You don't see that a lot in my movies.
No guns, no violence, and no cussing in our films.
Yeah. I think San Diego is so fortunate to have a filmmaker like you as part of the community, and I think the kind of global audience at large is lucky to have you and My Power of One, spreading such positive message to everybody.
One person at a time.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Thank you so much for sitting and chatting with us
Thanks,
again.
you guys. Thank you.
As always, I feel like we could sit and talk to you for 4 or 5 hours and still just barely scratch the surface. But,
Appreciate our time.
I know there's going to be a lot more that you'll be doing in the future, so I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Lovely.
Where can people find what you're doing for the future? What is your website?
Well, SueVicory.com is where all my films reside, and they're all live on there. So someone can go and watch all the films on SueVicory.com. MyPowerOf1.com has the brand and all the shirts on them.
Fantastic. Well, great. Thank you all for joining us here at the IntelleXual Talk Show, and we'll talk again soon.